well. Because a lot of these low-level bail numbers, people who are pretrial detention, so anybody who's in the Denver Detention Center for a particular crime, Sherrod Kendall, for example, has actually not been sentenced, and they are serving jail time and are currently under detention. So
yeah, this is also why bail reform is a key issue for us, is because it's ineffective and detrimental to people.
So I know we have given you a lot of information. We want you to turn to your neighbor for a second and just, we have shown you a lot of places where we see the impacts, and we want you to have a discussion for a few minutes about where you personally see the impacts. And yeah, if you don't know your neighbor, make a new friend.
You know what? I was standing in front of your camera for like the first 15 minutes before you told me to get out of the way. Or at least I think I was. Maybe I wasn't. Am I here? Oh, okay, good.
I mean, sometimes I think we go back and forth.
Yeah, and I knocked it over, but I think I got a position right now.
Yeah, no,
No, you want to start?
right.
So I've been asked to help reconvene us with a song, and I wanted to share that this is a song that actually was sung at a Black Lives Matter march after there had been sort of a memorial at the City County building for lives lost in Denver and around the country due to police violence. The song is very simple, but I wanted to ask us to do something else as we do the song, because I think one of the biggest impacts that is, the failure of the criminal justice system can possibly have is the loss of life. And I think that's when you'll see community attention especially get galvanized, is when people lose their lives at the hands of people that we as a city pay to protect us. And so I'll teach you the song, it's just 3 words, but then as we're doing it, I want to invite us to do 2 things. One of them is to say the names of people that we know or people that are in the broader community, names that we want to lift up as folks that we want to remember. And then after that, I want to invite us to say the names of people that are still living, people in your family, people in the room, people in your community that are the reasons that we're invested in transforming the system. So, the song is simple, it goes like this. And if you want to, you can bow your heads, but it's we remember you. We remember you. Keep that going. We remember you. We remember you. And as we keep singing, go ahead and call out names of people in the community that we've lost.
Okay.
Alonzo Ashley.
Jessica Hernandez.
What can I do?
Lonzo Ashley.
And now, call out the names of people, as we keep singing, go ahead and keep singing. The people that we're doing this work for, people who are still here. Your nieces and nephews, your family.
The broader community.
Terry Gaines.
Two more times, nice and loud.
Jimmy Spence.
Frank Lovato. Carlos Soranto.
April Sanchez.
Cool.
Thank you. So again, songs can be used for a lot of different things, and it's always a little uncomfortable, a little awkward, but I think it's important that we could move through that awkwardness to recognizing the power of doing something as a community as we're doing this important work. So.
And the power of voice. We have voice. So give yourselves a round. Alright, and then to dive back in, so we had a discussion before we broke around where we saw the intersections and the impacts. And now we want to dive back into what happens after an incident of law enforcement violence. This is an obvious question, or this is an obvious charged topic and concerns of probably everybody in this room, but our broader community as well. And there's a lot of misconceptions and miscommunication around what actually happens after an incident occurs. So there's the incident, and there's the DA, there's the discipline matrix that we have here in Denver, which is structured to review policy violations, whether or not an officer or a deputy violated a policy, a procedural violation, and what the discipline will be. The maximum discipline you could get from that would be a termination. But we don't want to go too far into the matrix because that is really a whole nother teaching in itself. And then there's the independent monitor. The independent monitor was set up after the murder of Paul Castaway as Paul Childs, who was a mentally disabled African American youth who was shot and killed by Denver police. And the rapid response was to develop this independent office as oversight and the ability to make recommendations as to how police should be disciplined. So really what we want to point out at this slide is just because a case happens, if the DA comes in and decides not to indict, that has nothing to do with necessarily the discipline matrix or a civil settlement taking place. The only relevance those three things will have are the initial incident in itself. So the DA comes in, decides not to prosecute, and it kicks it through the discipline matrix. Our current manager of safety, Stephanie O'Malley, if she decides to discipline an officer anywhere from demotion, suspension, to termination, that's when the discipline matrix will start. So no criminal charges will ever come out of the discipline matrix. It has nothing to do with criminal violation at all. And the independent monitor is responsible for reviewing the layers of the discipline matrix and presenting input at different stages. It's an office that we are currently trying to strengthen and get in the charter. It's currently an ordinance that could be done away with by the mayor at any time. So, and currently the independent monitor, from what we've been told, doesn't have a great working relationship with Mitch Morrissey. It's not that they are enemies, but they don't really work together at all. So that relationship just is kind of non-existent, and they are actually in the same building.
And Office of the Independent Monitor just mentioned their annual report came out earlier this year. I think it was in February, so that's available for people to read. It's very lengthy, but that's one of the tasks they have, an annual report.
They do an annual and a semi-annual, and that's like a summary of findings and recommendations for change that they have developed and compiled that should take place in the city of Denver. So, are there any questions on this? This was really just to clarify those three components and civil settlements. So if this, and we'll get into this, but because the DA doesn't indict and say an officer doesn't get terminated, that actually does not mean a civil settlement will not take place. And from what we've seen, most often it does take place in a very high numerical amount. But it's interesting that discipline and prosecution don't seem to follow. Next slide, please. So, and this actually just lays out the framework. Just because criminal charges are not filed from the DA's office doesn't mean a settlement won't take place. Payouts and settlements happen out of the city attorney's office since they are civil suits. So monetary amounts from the budget, and actually the city budgets millions of dollars every year to settle these kinds of cases out of court because they know they're going to happen. And actually last year we exceeded our allocated budget between Jamal Hunter and Marvin Booker's settlements, and then we had to dip into the general operating budget money to make up for that. But so in the past 11 years, we have not seen felony assault charges filed in a case of law enforcement abuse by Mitchell Morrissey. And there has been, we have seen officers charged for other criminal activities, but the types of cases that we're talking about are the brutality cases, the homicide cases, all of these cases that lead to serious injury, or even in the jail when we see Michael Marshall bumping into a deputy and then being murdered because of that. These are the kinds of cases that we're talking about. We're not talking about drunk drivers or prostitution rings. Of course, those are criminal actions, but they're not what we're talking about. So again, the city attorney, Stuart Shapiro, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, has been on paid leave since Jamal Hunter's case. He's been on paid leave for 19 months. And he has not reviewed any cases and has been paid $240,000 for being on administrative leave. And there's a link at the bottom, you can check that out. Any questions? Next slide, please.
So a DA can either help perpetuate or reduce mass incarceration, and especially the culture of law enforcement misconduct and the violence and the culture of violence within the law departments. According to the most recent DA candidate forums, it's become clear that excessive force, there is no excessive force charge. It would be either murder, attempted murder, or assault, second-degree felony, or a third-degree misdemeanor. And so I think that we point that out because all of us are calling them all of these cases excessive force or cases of excessive force because that's just the language that it is, that's what it is. And then we're having DA candidates tell us, sorry, that's not what it is. We're like, okay, well that's okay. It doesn't matter what you're calling it, make a charge. Or tell us how you're gonna make this, keep this from happening again.
So cases get dismissed all the time. So the idea that an officer cannot be indicted, we believe that to be false, and we believe that if officers are indicted, that will present a standard to other officers and deputies in the community that these types of behaviors are not allowed or accepted, not just in the community, but in administration, right?